The God of the Christian faith is a complex character. In this podcast, Justin, an ex-Christian with former aspirations to become a pastor, and Kevin, a devout believer whose faith remains strong, come together to discuss the implications of a God fearsome enough to create the tiger and gentle enough to bring forth the lamb. This is the Tiger and Lamb Podcast, a Christian Quisition production. If for some reason you are listening in and this is the first ever episode of this podcast that you listen to, you decided, you know what, I'm going to skip past the episode that says Hillsong Documentary Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. What do you know? Here we are at Hillsong Documentary Part 4. You should probably go back and listen to the first 3. But alas, we're happy to have you here no matter what. But basically, here we are talking about the Secrets of Hillsong documentary, Episode 4. This documentary produced by FX and currently available on Hulu. Now, I know that I've mentioned that many times. This is available on Hulu. I know that I've also probably failed to mention that this was produced by FX before. But either way, I want to assure the audience here that we are not sellouts. We are not sellouts. We did not sell out. We did not extend our giant advertising capability to Hulu and offer to lend those little guys a hand. In fact, if they would like to pay us for this, I will freely accept that generous offer, but such an offer is yet to be extended. Yet. They'll see. Christian Quisition is going to be real big one day. We have discussed this episode at length, and very honestly, very pleased with the amount of content that is available in episode 4, because Kevin, you and I were talking about this last week when we were going to record episode 3. We were like, man, there's not a whole lot to talk about in this one, is there?
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of concerned.
We kept circling back to themes that we had already touched on. We're trying to come up with something a little, fresher.
It kind of feels like that if I have a criticism about the documentary, I have to say it probably could have been 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's not on us to come up with, content for 4 episodes. They should have just condensed it. I agree.
Yeah, and in my mind's eye, I actually had to edit out me saying that this was a 3-episode documentary in the first episode in the series, because the 3rd episode was just not memorable enough for me to remember that it existed. So, what do you know? Here we are.
Well, all those years in church and sitting under sermons, how many points do the pastors usually make? 3.
Exactly.
So I think that's in your head still.
I was conditioned. Conditioned by the church.
That number.
That evil entity, apparently. Anyways, we've broken this one down into 3 primary categories. We talked about sort of just like how this episode really is just the downfall of the, I suppose, mega status of Hillsong as a church. Of course, their music still lives on, no doubt about that. But the first sort of thing that we had discussed was just the unveiling of, let's just say, controversial practices of Hillsong College. The college had implemented this very peculiar and obviously quite problematic audit of sorts. Kevin, are you familiar with Scientology and their audit system?
I am somewhat familiar with it, yeah, but I think a lot of people would benefit to hear you explain exactly what they do when you walk in that Scientology door.
Okay, well, not to steal from yet another documentary, because that's not what this podcast is going to be, I promise, but I do highly recommend the documentary Going Clear on HBO, where they talk about this a little bit more in detail. But effectively, the Church of Scientology utilizes what they call audits, which is essentially like 2/3 of a lie detector test. I forget which component it's missing, but essentially a lie detector test has like 3 essential components, and the audit system kind of removes one. And what you get when you do that is you get this like cool sciencey looking meter and like a little red line that goes up and down as people are talking, because it's monitoring like the electric conductivity of your heart, whatever, science, I don't know. And they don't know either, right? So when you're sitting in front of the auditor, so to speak, you're seeing all of this activity on this little monitor, and it's kind of messing with your head, because you're like, what is this detecting? And what they tell you it's detecting is essentially, and I forget the name of the aliens that are supposedly inside your head and sort of invading your thoughts and vying for position in their ultimate desire to possess you, right? It's an audit that is supposed to measure the amount of aliens that you have in your head. And the whole goal is that you go clear. You get to a point where you're so advanced in Scientology that you have gone clear. You're clear of all of these aliens in your head. They're gone. They're completely gone.
It's like an exorcism.
It is. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
No holds barred. That is exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, what's interesting is in the process of these audits, under the auspices of them saying, oh, we're totally clearing aliens from your head. Shocker, guys, I do not believe that there's any validity to Scientology. So if that's controversial, I apologize. But what it seems quite clear to me that they are actually doing is they are prodding for dirt. They are asking pointed questions, and they're saying, whoa, your sensor's going way off the charts here. You need to tell me more about that. I can tell that we're going to be able to dig out some more of these aliens in this corridor. So they ask you all these questions about your sex life and your personal life, and have you been in any legal trouble? And shocker, a lot of people don't end up leaving the Scientology church, in large part, likely, allegedly, because they have all this dirt on you that they will gladly use and have a history of doing so.
Dang.
Anyways, Hillsong College seems to have an audit process of their own. And that process was children's safety checks. Essentially, we're inquiring with you to see if you are safe to be around children. And among the questions that they ask, according to several previous Hillsong College students, essentially was like, have you had sex in the last 6 months? Have you masturbated in the last 6 months? And if the answer to that is yes, then you get a little red dot on your name tag, and everybody knows. So, Kevin, if you were to come into my office, let's say you don't know me, and this is Hillsong College student Kevin.
Not a real Hillsong College student.
Yeah, I knew you were going to struggle with that one. Hillsong College student Kevin comes into my office, and I ask him, Kevin, when was the last time you masturbated? What would you tell me, Kevin?
I would say, thank you for the time. I'm going to find another college.
But let's say you really believe in it. I'm a pastor. I'm a significant figure to you. So you're looking at me and I'm asking you this question. I guess the real question here on the podcast is, do you tell the truth?
I would want to know why that's relevant.
I think that would get you a red dot already.
Even if my answer is never, that doesn't get rid of the problem, because now I'm going to be wondering, what are you going to ask me next? It's not going to stop there.
You think 18-year-old Kevin would have the wherewithal to ask those questions, though?
No. I would probably be scared and pressured into answering all the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think you would answer all the questions honestly?
Of course.
You would, of course. Okay.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, because I'd be scared. I'm talking to somebody not just that is older than me in a position of authority, but also add on to that, they are at the head of a church, which I hold in high regard.
So if you were completely honest with them, you potentially would find yourself in the position that a lot of these interviewees found themselves in, where they answered the questions honestly, trusting their senior leadership, and then they got the red dot on their name tag, and the rest of their potential career at Hillsong was irrevocably changed, correct?
Mm-hmm. Did you ever read The Scarlet Letter in school?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, basically it takes place in the olden times in America, like the Puritan days, and this girl, Hester Prynne, I think is her name, she has to walk around with a scarlet letter, the letter A, like on her clothing to symbolize that she was an adulteress. Mm-hmm. And it's a way of public shaming and showing everybody this is what happens when you commit this sin. And I remember reading that even in I think I was like a freshman or something, and I just thought, that doesn't happen anymore. I was already imagining the non-Christians in the class saying, see, this is the problem with this religion stuff. This is so ridiculous. And yet, we literally have the same color. The scarlet letter is now a red dot in Hillsong College. It's amazing to me that that is still happening. And this isn't just some little church in the hills of West Virginia that nobody's ever heard of. This is a mega church that is on the news constantly, and they are practicing this in their college. It's amazing.
And for a more modern reference for some of our younger audience members out there, any one of you 25 people, there is a film that came out in the last 20 years or so, so even then you might not be one of the younger ones. There's a film.
But to be fair, it's more recent than 1700s literature.
It is. It's called Easy A. So if you've seen the film Easy A, then you might be familiar. It's got one of the famous Emmas in it, and then it's got that chick from Phil the Future, Phil's, best friend / girlfriend. Spoilers if you haven't seen Phil the Future. And then if you're from, Gen Z and you don't know at all what I'm talking about, you have Google, you have ChatGPT, you can figure it out. Anyways, that is actually a really interesting observation. I think that's kind of a funny connection there. But it's interesting that you at like a younger age were able to identify that this seems asinine, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of wild. No way. This is not how it should be done, right?
Like, I'm against adultery as much as the next guy, but this ain't the way to solve the problem.
Right. Well, and what's interesting, Carl Lentz had a really good observation. He says you learn to hide things early, right? And I mean, imagine you go into this room and they're asking you these questions and you have any semblance of knowledge that this could potentially affect the way that you can progress through your potential career through Hillsong, which obviously you're so passionate about. You've moved to Australia, ostensibly, to pursue that goal, right? And they ask you these questions, and not only this, but even if you have no idea why they're really asking you these questions, if you have any inkling about the red dot element of things, then you're also probably not going to want to tell the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I'm just going to say that I'm assuming that for young men and women between 18 and 22, there are very, very, very few people who would easily pass this test with flying colors while answering honestly, right? I mean, it's just kind of biology. So this creates distrust among peers. And it also prevents people from being able to be open about their struggles or their challenges or things that they feel like they need to develop in. If you're a Christian who believes that these things are wrong, and you're a Christian who is struggling with your natural inclination to do these things, who do you talk to about it?
Right.
You have all of these other green dots? No way.
Yeah.
Because then you have to admit that you lied to your superiors. What if you get found out? What if they tell on you? What if they rat on you? Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to that rule, and obviously that's not something that's universally accurate. I'm not saying that this was like something that perfectly applied to every single person. I'm sure that there were people who confided in each other and who were able to relate under the same duress, right? But it does create this almost totalitarian Big Brother type pressure of, I'm guilty of this thing, he's probably guilty of this thing, but he didn't say it, and I didn't say it, but if he does say it, then I know that he lied to the superiors, and the superiors are the people who are teaching us, who control our careers, and, I feel like there's a lot of pressure that's added up in there. I don't know, do you feel that way, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, I've heard in totalitarian regimes that you're not as much scared about the leaders or even the secret police, although they're always in the background, as much as your neighbor or even your relative. Yeah. Because of what you exactly said. You don't know who's on what side. You don't know who you can open up with, and so that's why you stuff everything down. I'm trying to even understand what is the thought process behind this. Why do they think this is going to be effective? Because I guess the goal is they want to keep their kids safe from people that might harm them. But
is that
now
the goal?
That's what they would say, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, going with that logic, I don't know how it takes you here. Like, if I was their spokesman, I don't know how I would present this in a way that sounds convincing.
But this exact type of issue is not necessarily uncommon or unheard of in evangelical circles. Let's put it this way. Kevin, I might be putting you on the spot here. Would you say that an appropriate response to the sin of homosexuality is to ban gay marriage?
I think that's like a lazy way to go about it. It's just, let's write some words on some paper and then we'll feel good that we fought against this sin. It's not really doing the hard work of addressing why is that person engaging in that and how can we help them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just goes to show that, one, just because you're going to say that you cannot legally be on the same paper with certain tax benefits in the United States of America doesn't mean that they're not going to live with each other and love each other and do all the other things that married couples do.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of examples in mainstream society where evangelicals take this extreme approach, like we're going to fight on behalf of God, we're going to fight his battles, and we're going to stop this sin from happening. And whether or not that actually does anything, it doesn't matter as much as it makes them feel good about doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I think that, again, it's short-sighted. I do think that they had a goal in mind. I think that the goal was much more corporatized, though, than it was evangelicalized. I think it was like Brian Houston became very prescient of the issue of there being homosexual leadership in their church at a certain point, and we don't know at what point in time these questions were put in place, but I think that there was this political self-protection element put into this, where it's like, we want to know if you have any proclivities that could make us look bad in the future, and we want to take extreme precautions to protect ourselves from it. And to be honest, it wouldn't really shock me if part of the reason that they did this was to let people know that, hey, if you do have these problems, don't tell anyone. You know what I mean? Like, let's pound this into your skull at a very, very early stage that if you have any of these issues, you are not to talk about it, because that could reflect poorly on us.
Yeah, and like you were saying with Carl's quote about how you just learn early to just repress, that's a theme that I've been noticing throughout this documentary. From the top down, it's just all about keeping things peaceful, so to speak. I mean, it comes out in the end, as we're going to get to later in this episode, but it's this culture of just stuff it down. It's embarrassing. Let's not bring it out. That's going to hurt the brand. And if you really cared about these people and their sin, you would, again, like you said, want to foster an environment where people feel like they can open up about it, rather than one in which people are just so ashamed and embarrassed that they can't go to anybody with it.
They do so much to cultivate an image in order to prevent themselves from exposure, and in order to make themselves look a certain way that will be appealing to as many people as possible while pushing away as few people as possible, despite the fact that that image is actually just a lie, right? And another incident that took place here that we find so much hypocrisy here is Jason May's indecent assault on Anna Crenshaw, which is sort of outrageous when we consider the context of Carl Lentz in the previous episode, where he was really raked over the coals by Brian Houston for his sexual impropriety. Meanwhile, this young man, Jason Mays, is actually sentenced to 2 years in jail or prison. I don't know what they call it down in the Aussie country, but he is sentenced to 2 years in the cell, in the box, for indecent assault. He pleads guilty. There's no denying it, right? And then comes back to work at Hillsong.
It's interesting to note who his father was, which was the head of HR of all things for Hillsong.
So Brian Houston says he got himself into a bad situation.
Yeah.
About this 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, I don't know, young college-age man who pleads guilty. He got himself into a bad situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say. Are you kidding me right now?
I'm curious if, God forbid, that had ever happened to one of Brian's kids, that they were the victim of something like that, if he would have said the same thing, like, oh, the person that attacked my kid just got themselves in a bad situation. It just seems so
absolutely
cold.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting to think about somebody who did have children, who did have, I think he has daughters. I'll have to look into that. But it is interesting to think about that, because if that happened to any of my kids, I'll tell you what, I'd say, yeah, he's going to get himself into a worse situation because I'm going to stick a foot up his. Anyways, it's unbelievable. But in the context of what he did to Carl Lentz, who was ousted from the church for moral failures that, as far as I know, are not against the law, i.e. cheating on your wife. Mind you, there were allegations that came out later that I don't want to dismiss, but the context here is that someone announced that he had cheated on his wife, and he confessed to doing that, and he was ousted, and then he was absolutely lit up in the media, right? Cheating on your wife, not illegal. Groping and assaulting a young woman because you're too drunk at a party, illegal, immoral, unacceptable. Fire him. Get him into counseling, sure, but don't ever let him inside the faculty lounge ever again. Unbelievable, unacceptable, incredible that this young lady has to go on 60 Minutes to get any attention regarding this issue. And the fact that this kid ever found himself being a paid faculty member of the church after what he did is unbelievable. And come on, like the irony of it being his father's the head of HR of all departments.
Of all the departments, yeah.
You would think that the head of HR would have an understanding as to why that's not very appropriate. But
wow. Yeah, that got me.
Anyways, the next segment that we wanted to talk about in this episode was just the downfall of Brian Houston. Now, this is something that's been telegraphed a bit, right? In the last episode, we did talk about Brian Houston's father, Frank Houston, and the very obvious, very unambiguous cover-up that, by the way, Brian Houston found not guilty for covering that up. But I guess it's a little bit telegraphed that Brian Houston was on his way down, right? The fact that his cover-up of his father's impropriety came out and began to come under investigation. And then we find out Brian is going on trial for the cover-up of his father's misbehavior, to put it extremely mildly. And he says, hey, listen, the church is important, and this trial is really just going to detract from the church, and I don't want this to be a huge media firestorm that negatively affects Hillsong. So what I'm going to do, I, being Brian Houston, is I'm going to remove myself from the leadership position, whatever analog name the modern megachurch has for what is effectively their CEO. He steps down, and 1 month later, it starts to make headlines that Mr. Houston himself has been involved in not one, but two, at least, particular incidents of, let's say, impropriety. Is that a good word for it, Kevin?
Again, to put it mildly, yes. Especially from a pastoral standpoint, that's pretty mild.
I mean, goodness gracious. So this is the interesting thing about this. Brian is accused on two separate accounts, right? There's two separate stories that come out. The first is that he is sending inappropriate text messages to a younger woman and staff member of the church. Okay? The woman immediately is like, this is not okay, not comfortable with this, and complains, brings it to the attention of Hillsong leadership. So what does Brian do, and what does the board do as it pertains to this incident? They say, let's have her sign an NDA, and Brian offers to pay out of his own pocket, which came from the church anyway.
Right.
A payout, essentially, for this woman's suffering, of course, in exchange for her signing a non-disclosure agreement. So He gives her the order of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure if the actual number was disclosed for that particular incident, but he tells the church, I'll pay for this one. This is on me, guys. I'll pay for it. It's on me. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. Don't worry. But I do expect a bonus next month. It's not confirmed if he said that last part. But the second incident, I've labeled it here on my notes, the hotel room incident. Brian goes into a hotel room with another woman who... Did you catch what her role was or what she was doing there? I think she might have been like a speaker or like a guest speaker that they were paying.
That sounds right.
It might not be, so don't take,
sure.
Watch the documentary. How many times I got to say it? Hulu, pay me. Anyways, in this case, we know a few things. We know that he entered the room and he was alone with her for 40 minutes. We know that according to Brian... Well, he had double dosed on his anti-anxiety pills, and he would mixed it with alcohol, so he has no recollection of what happened in the room. Just no clue. And he paid her $25,000 to sign an NDA.
But he has no idea what happened.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, wouldn't you pay $25,000 to someone if you forgot what happened for those 40 minutes?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, pay $25,000 for something you don't know that. Yeah.
So...
Remarkable.
Suffice it to say that, and mind you, I should go back to the text message incident because I feel that I have not done that justice on either side of the equation, because the text messages that he sends were somewhere along the lines of, oh, I'd just really love to give you a hug or a kiss or a cuddle. I don't know if it's like worse that it's not explicitly sexual or better. You know what I mean?
It's very weird.
I mean, it's really weird.
It's very weird.
The question is, would you be sitting here right now, like, would you have a better or worse reaction to this if it was more explicit? If it was like, I want to get down and dirty versus I want to give you a hug or a cuddle or a kiss?
I think what it shows about Brian is that he's trying to test the waters. In that instance.
He's being careful. Yeah.
Right.
He was like, if this comes out,
which it did,
in the event that this comes out, of course, wants to make sure that he's covered here, that he's not guilty of too much. But I mean, even that was enough for this woman to be like, nope, out of here, nope, not going to engage in this at all.
Yeah, all the Christians out there, if a pastor from your church texted your wife that, how would you feel about that text? I want to give you a kiss or a cuddle.
And again, in the context of what he put Carl through after his impropriety, right? Genuinely, it makes me wonder if Carl Lentz had cheated on his wife, but that behavior had not been publicly disclosed by the affair partner, as it was in real life, right? Would Hillsong have said, hey, it's okay, just pay her $25,000, have her sign an NDA, and we'll move on? Mm-hmm. I do wonder. But as it stands, we have to look and sort of just gawk at the absolute hypocrisy of, well, when Carl does it, he's an absolute narcissist, right? But when I do it, I just did too much anti-anxiety pills and mixed it with alcohol. It was a one-off occasion.
Right.
So...
And I'll pay it myself with, like you said, the money that the church pays me.
And of significant note here, right, in this particular situation, Phil Dooley, the person who would eventually become, and still is, by the way, the current CEO or executive global pastor or whatever of Hillsong, he communicates in a Zoom meeting that's immediately leaked to the press, which is great. Phil Dooley has this really amazing quote where he said, "We decided not to cover up, but to not expose."
That's another hallmark of like corporate culture, is to just come up with a new
rebrand.
way. Yeah. Just different words.
Yep, rebrand it. We didn't cover up. We just didn't expose it, all these people, they shouldn't have to suffer because little old Brian took an extra anti-anxiety pill and drank some alcohol that day, right?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do about it? Cover it up. I mean, not expose it.
Not expose it. Thank you.
So what I love about this episode is it's filled with unambiguous accusations. Like things where it's like, look, we don't actually know 100% perfectly what happened in that room. We don't know exactly what happened. We actually don't have like a screenshot of the text messages to look at and say, but we do know with 100% certainty that Brian paid them off out of his own pocket. And Phil Dulius says this on camera, which found it really interesting too. Bobby Houston, like up in the right corner of the Zoom call, just kind of like taking notes. You know?
Oh, was she? I didn't notice that.
Yeah. She was there, and she's like, oh, I knew this was coming. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
All this to say, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
I want to enter a special segment here real quick, which is board member Kevin.
You want to give the disclaimer this time?
No. He's not a real board member, but board member Kevin of a massive global spiritual movement. Okay. And your church CEO, executive global pastor, whatever you want to call him, is guilty of a couple improprieties. And he says, don't worry, guys. I got her to sign an NDA. I gave her $25,000. We're good. What's your vote in this situation? What do you say at this table?
So one thing that I've been wanting to do better at as a Christian is memorize parts of the Bible. And I have to admit that although I've read the Bible, there's wide swaths of it that I haven't memorized. I can't recall off the top of my head an instance where Paul said, and if an elder in your church has a sexual impropriety, make sure that he gives money to the person that he offended and you don't talk about it again. I don't remember that passage. I do remember passages, though, about the strict guidelines for selecting an elder, i.e. a leader of a church.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Because if you're talking about somebody that is going to be teaching about sexual immorality and the destruction that it can cause, you better make sure that there's somebody that if they have engaged in it, that they've repented and that they're not engaging in it anymore. They're held to a higher standard than the congregant is, which is interesting because in the Hillsong experiences we've been discussing, it seems like Hillsong college students are held to a very high standard as opposed to
not
global pastors. Yeah, sometimes they are. I don't know if Brian ever had to undergo an audit like that. At Hillsong, at least. But to get around to your question, no, that is not how you handle sin of that magnitude from a pastor. You do not pay money to the victim and pretend it didn't happen. I think that's about as far away from what Christianity teaches about a situation like that as you can get.
Well, and okay, let's just say you are seated at the 25-foot long 10-foot wide, petrified wood carved and polished desk that's been flown in from some exotic place like Sedona, Arizona or something like that. And you're sitting at this, beautiful luxurious diamond-studded table with the other 9 board members all wearing your Giorgio Armani suits and brandishing your Rolexes and your Cartier bracelets and the what have you. And this situation has been brought to your attention. Of course, Brian Houston is on the 97-inch OLED flat screen TV that's been plastered to the wall in a Zoom call that can only show his face in 1080p. Do you stand up then and there and slam your fist down into the petrified wood table and say, ow, that really hurt, and say, we got to do something here? What do you do? What do you say if you do?
Yeah, I would hope that I would have resigned long before that point when I learned about the inner workings of Hillsong.
I bet a lot of them thought that.
That's a good point.
Should have got out when the getting was good.
The suits look good. The suits look good. Yeah, what do I say? I would just say, can you show me where in Scripture this is how we handle situations like this? Because I hear you talking about the Word of God every week. So I would like to know at least, like, where is this coming from? Can you justify it? Because I think that's a good way of, without him getting too defensive, just saying, hey, this is something we all agree on in this room, right? The Bible. So can you show me where are you getting this from? Because we need to base our decisions on that. That's our guidebook. And I would be really curious to see what his justification is.
Well, and then you'd also be really shocked, but also not shocked to see the other 9 board members pull out the book by Brian Houston that says, money, 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 right?
Co-authored by Mr. Krabs.
This is our Bible, of course, right? Yeah. That seems to be their Bible. Anyways, enough of board member Kevin. I know that that's a situation you would never want to find yourself in. I apologize for putting you in those Louboutin shoes. But
they're uncomfortable, yeah.
This all kind of leads to a great transition towards sort of the final element of the episode here, which is the corporate greed reveal, the unveiling of what is actually happening with this money. Let me just put down a disclaimer. It would not surprise me at all to know that Hillsong Church has donated millions of dollars to various charitable causes over the course of their lifetime. I would expect that that's probably true. So I do want to sort of like make sure that that disclaimer is thrown out there. But we should also note that the church's bookkeeper, Natalie Moses, thank you, Natalie Moses, shout out from the Christian Inquisition team. She's looking over the money and she's like, this is looking a little weird. You know, there's some funky numbers in here. She came up to somebody and I have to imagine the conversation went down like, hey, listen, I'm probably totally missing something, or somebody probably just input these numbers wrong. You know what I mean? But I noticed a transaction in the books where we bought Cartier bracelets for the entire board with the money that was from the poor box account. That's not true, right? That's not correct, right? And they were like, you're fired, goodbye. That's how that went.
The poor box.
The poor box. That's what they call it. They call it the poor box. So if people are putting money in the poor box, these are going to go to the poor. No, they're going to go to poor old board keepers who need a new Cartier bracelets, $150,000 vacations, private jet flights, cash gifts. I think one of them was like just $30,000 cash to each board member. Just because I love you guys. You know what I mean?
I remember when I was a kid at my home church, a guy said that his dad refused to go to church. And he said basically it was because he felt like it was just a big money scheme. Like they were just trying to always extract money from him. And I don't know. I don't think that guy went to our church, but sometime in his past, he went to the church. And I think that this is the kind of stuff that he would be imagining. And maybe that was happening. You know, we're definitely singling out Hillsong because that's what this is about. We watched a documentary about Hillsong. This is not the first time this has happened. It's not the last time. There are plenty of pastors out there that dress very nicely, that have private jets. I can go on with all the luxury, the big house, all that stuff. The fact that this came from the poor box, you couldn't, like, if they made this up, you think, come on, this is a little ridiculous.
It couldn't come from the Hillsong College revenue.
Yeah, this is a little over the top, guys. Like, you couldn't just take it from the travel fund or something like that, you know?
It takes it from, like,
the
ridiculous to evil, right?
Yeah. It's like flouting. It's like, look what we can do. We'll just take it from the poor box. I don't care.
Yeah, and when this stupid little bookkeeper brings it up, we're going to fire her, and everything's going to be fine, you know?
Unbelievable.
They really thought they could get away with anything. That's absolutely insane. And again, one of the people, at least, I haven't looked into their current board right now, but Phil Dooley was a member who was receiving Cartier bracelets and you know, luxurious items and cash gifts. He's still the guy.
Yeah.
He is the guy to this day. So the transition from Brian Houston went straight to another person who was engaging in these improprieties unambiguously. And that's the other thing about this. We talk about things that aren't provable, and Kevin and I have tried to take great lengths to make sure that we weren't overemphasizing accusations that we felt we couldn't substantiate. This is written in paper, signed checks, it's bookkeeping. It's there. It's written. It's as verifiable as it gets. And an entire commission is dedicated to investigating their corporate greed after finding this out. And this information was made publicly available. This is not, and then just the gall. Oh my goodness, the gall of Phil Dooley to stand up on stage in response to them being investigated for their financial abuses, right? Says, Jesus loves you, Mr. Wilkie.
Right.
Dear. Oh, dear. For reference, Mr. Wilkie was the member of parliament who was heading up the investigation.
Yeah, he was involved in it. And that comment that Mr. Dooley made, that is a classic tactic of... And we see this in Hillsong, but again, this is not just exclusive to Hillsong.
Hillsong's a blueprint. It's a blueprint.
Yeah.
It's not the first one, but it's a big one.
It's like, oh, we're under attack. I guess it's just because we're doing the right thing, because we're serving God. So God bless you, Mr. Wilkie. Jesus loves you. I don't know where this is coming from.
They lean so hard into the end times narratives and the you will be persecuted narratives, which were probably more directed towards the apostles that actually did get persecuted. But yeah, the you will be persecuted lines in the Bible, and it's just like, see, the Bible's right. Yeah. Look, it said, and by the way, every single cult leader that has ever had any modicum of success has used this exact tactic when he started to get found out. Go on a spree of watching cult documentaries and just look for at what point do they start talking about how the world is ending, and you're going to see that everyone's going to start attacking us, and they're going to tell you a bunch of things, but they're not true. It is a cult-like mentality. It's insane.
Yeah. It's, I don't know what to say. It speaks for itself. But I think sometimes these church leaders, they get in this mindset, and they forget what the mission is. And I think Hillsong suffered from that. I think there were probably people in that church who had good motives. I know there were, because they were interviewing people at the beginning who seemed very heartfelt about it.
150,000 members globally at their peak. There were definitely some good souls in there for sure.
Yeah. But it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, how do we get the gospel out? All right, well, we need to expand and go to other places. Okay, that's true. But then it got to the point where it was like there was just this obsession, this tunnel vision about expansion, grow, grow, grow. And you start to forget what was the purpose of that growth. Where are we trying to get with this? Why are we doing this?
Well, I appreciate that, Kevin. And I appreciate any wonderful listener who has stuck it out with us this far. This is about the end of our time here. We are available to be reached by email, just in case anyone wants to know. Contact us at ChristianQuisition.com, Quisition, Quisition, ChristianQuisition.com. And we're also just really happy to hear any feedback that anybody has in that channel. If you have questions, if you have critiques, if you think, hey, I don't think that you guys addressed enough things in this documentary, let us know. That being said, if you do appreciate our content, I will say that we are very, very much in this extremely small and attempted growth phase. If you feel like what we have to offer is something that is worth sharing, then we just ask that you do share if you would be so kind. And if you don't want to share, just keep listening, keep downloading new episodes. That makes us happy. And that, honestly, we're just so grateful to have even one listener at this junction, much less, the couple dozen of you that are out there right now. So, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that jazz. We're here on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, everything. And yeah, every little thing means a lot to us at this junction. And we're just so grateful to have you guys on board. And we just hope that you stay on board. So yeah, thank you so much.